Hey everybody, how's it going? So, the long-awaited review of Atlas Shrugged is coming. Because I'm sure you were all at the edge of your seats. Because everybody cares and nobody cares about me. um, anyway, I'm just saying that to sound official and act like I'm important. Which I'm not. But how are you doing today? Real quick, as a disclaimer, I'll throw that in here in the beginning. I'm very grateful for all the responses I've been getting from my last two videos. Both the negative, positive, cruel, rude, whatever. I thank you for that. Because I'm good. I'm good with all of it. You know, anything that makes this debate work, you know, for people to care. You know, please call me wrong. You know, I'm not alluding to saying that you know, I'm an authority on anything, and you know, I've made such statements in you know, written down and everything else. But at any rate, thanks so much. Keep listening. I hope that I'm enriching your lives in some way. So, I read Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged over the course of about 7 months. I'm sorry, this book was a hard read. Not that you cared, we're waiting 7 months for this. I had read previously her book on objectivism prior to this, so I have the proper context of her philosophy and can think the way intended. I came to accept her epistemology anyway. So, let me start with this. Where I differ from Rand is I believe to be fully human, one must embrace both aspects of the mind and the heart. Rand's approach is purely the mind, but specifically the left side of the mind. Rigid, concrete, orderly thought process, in spite of the right side of the brain, which is the arts, creativity, abstraction, dreams, you know, things like that. You know, and I'm left-handed. So I'm very left-handed. I have a very right side of the brain. Like, I'm terrible at math. I hate thinking about it. Yet I'm a musician. So that's a pain in the ass, because music is all math meets the abstract. Musicians are incredible people, the ones that actually have talent. Me, whatever. I'm not going to say I have talent. That's for you to decide if you like what I play or not. You know, it's you know, most people listen to my shit and they say it's all noise, you know, because it's death metal, but whatever. So, Atlas Shrugged Part 1 sets us up with an America in decline, where mankind values the heart and good intentions at the expense of those whose minds would willingly be a part of the system. That's the best way to describe it. I'm not going to go into over-the-top super descriptions on everything, but that's a good basic. And hey, in further comments, ask me what I meant about that. Maybe some of it I'm going to be revealing in the Part 2s and Part 3s. Because I'm not trying to be a complete disclaimer here. There will be some there will be some spoiler. Anyway, so there's been a contempt for all who have wealth and are better than their competitors that has brewed as the idea of governments that need to take care of the people through economic planning begins to take hold. we have two main characters in this book. There's the railroad heiress, Dagny Taggart. She is a specialist in running and planning railroad routes, schedules, making improvements on the system, as well as the knowledge of what staff is needed and what they need to be able to do the job. She's basically the quintessential administrator of what she does, and being part of the railroads is, you know, still important to our economy today. No one in America can compete with her. As this works. Her railroad line, which is actually her brother's railroad line, but she's the one that actually runs everything. That's all part of the whole shtick, you know. The brother ends up being one of the bad guys. But anyway, then there's Hank Reardon. He is a metallurgist who has created a new metal based on copper, iron, and other elements in his own design. His metal, which he calls Rearden steel, is, I forget how much, let's say 3 times stronger than actual steel, and he can produce it at a reduced cost efficiently. Of course, the relationship of these two characters is obvious, as Dagny needs Hank's steel, and Hank needs Dagny's business. So these two are basically business partners and other kinds of partners. Waka waka waka. Of course, the country needs both of them because railroads, even today, still run an important part of the economy. It's still 10 times more efficient to run things by rail than it is by trailer truck or by boat, and definitely by plane. So that's really where that's at. You know, the argument for the railroad is still extremely important, even with the amount of semi-trucks we have out there. So in this version of America, both of these powerful people, not in government, also respect common law. They never lied, cheated, or stole to gain what they have, and what they have as a consequence was good for the economy. However, it was believed that their kind, as in all rich people, anybody who just has money, who did well, were nothing but monsters hoarding the economy for themselves just because inferior businesses couldn't compete. Unlike in our America, he was not using the government as a crutch like most corporations do. However, the competitors did, because they were failing, and they could play the victim and get public support to steal everything from the quote-unquote good guys of our story. Which is more than just them, but those are our two main characters, are Hank and Dagny. Even probably more so Dagny than Hank, but Hank's pretty much a co-star. But in this world, America is the only nation that hasn't become a people's republic. Throughout the book, they always refer to other nations as, oh, there's the People's Republic of France and the People's Republic of Australia and da-da-da-da-da. So it's just suggesting that the rest of the world has adapted the European socialism style that we know today from the Eurozone style of economy. You know, either socialist or more communist or whatnot. And what Ayn Rand is just trying to say is that all these things, at the end of the day, you obviously dare not oppose them because they will just come with their guns and they will seize control. But the rest of the world has this socialist thing, and so America is beginning to fall to that ideology itself. International trade is also affected because of piracy, specifically from an elusive pirate named Ragnar Dansgold. I'm assuming it's Swedish, and Dansgold, and I listen to Swedish death metal and black metal, and I can't pronounce a Swedish name, forgive me. At least I'm assuming it is. It's got umlauts under the O. So anyway, and he basically will loot any ship that is in business with the government and makes that cargo disappear. So he's like this ruthless, mysterious guy of the oceans that nobody can catch, and everybody hates him, and yada yada yada. Anyway, so unlike in our world, for Rand's universe, there is no friendlier business partner like China. It seems that the captains of industry here are forced to fight an impossible battle against the world that doesn't understand their inherent deserved value. So, through the first aspect of this story, it plants the seeds of the socialists taking over the country, explaining how everything works in their most common terms. The principles of supply and demand, rewards and merits of a person's contributions to prosperity, how the new government mandates destroy those things, so on and so forth. She has a really great way of explaining things in a way that it transcends your economic specifics. You know, you could have a gold-based dollar, you could have a fiat currency, you can have a completely centralized economic planning or a pseudo-economic planning situation like we have in America as it gets more centralized, but hopefully that's going to fall apart after we audit the Fed, which will eventually happen. It's impossible to not at this point. But long story short is that she explains things in such terms where, like, it's almost like the money is irrelevant. The point is that the success of the nation, you know, the ability of things to function and work and people to have lives and to have, you know, and have their ability and their budget is falling apart. And she gets into these general terms which are universal and it really gets the point across. It's just, for some people, I can imagine that it goes over their head because you really have to think. It's such a wordy book because of her objective approach to every little thing. Because if she didn't, it would just be nuts. So, I mean, she's very meticulous in her descriptions. She analyzes every situation from the angles of all the major players. The book is written from that objective perspective because without it, her ideas would be dismissed as cruel, amoral, self-centered. The only thing it leaves is for you to assess the conditions of our society and government and see if it matches the story at all. You know, because this wasn't just her having fun writing a book and then it happened to come true. This was her looking at serious trends. This is a woman that she lived through. It was a socialist or communist takeover in her own country just after World War II, I believe, or just before it. And, you know, and then being in America, she sees all the great things about it, but she also sees the great danger in how our economy actually works now because of the fact that the government has so much control and knew that the holding back of authority was just basically a farce. They basically held back using troops because they wouldn't have a good argument for it, for just going in and stealing the stuff, because they certainly had the manpower to do so, or I don't even know what I'm thinking about right now. As you can tell, this is a moment where I'm slightly off script. I've gone off script quite a few times. Sometimes my thoughts run amok. Sorry. Point is, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Harry Truman, and not the best people in the world, and some of you will want to crucify me for saying that. But trust me, when you understand a little bit more what's going on behind, just because a president has done good things doesn't mean that he has done even darker things in the secrets. And that should be not a surprise to a hell of a lot of people, especially if you're bothering to listen to me. So, the recurring theme of the book is a simple, elusive question. Who is John Galt? The opening line of the book. In part 1, what we know about this question is only how it makes us feel. Us as in, the people in the book, society. It was an old saying that lost meaning a long time ago, and no one is sure if such a person ever existed even. But it came to mean the great unknown. It became the answer to the meaning of life, in essence. Somebody would ask, like, why does the sun shine, in the east, and how does the and how does the fish get to market? And somebody will just say, who is John Galt? Like, literally, like let's not go look for the answers to the universe. Who knows? That's what it means. It simply means who knows, in a sense, where it insults the name of this man, John Galt, and then you will understand why it is an insult. Basically, by the time you get to part 3. So, the suggestion is that America had lost its way, that no one was looking for answers anymore, and simply presumed the government was a good instrument to solving problems, even though they had no answers either. The pinnacle of this first book is the creation of a new railroad line for Dagny. And by pinnacle, I don't mean it happened at the end, but it was like the biggest thing that I felt stood out in part 1. It was very much the crux of many of the ideas going forward was this new railroad line for Dagny using Rearden steel. This is done as a last triumph of two industrialists before the country begins to fall into heavy government oversight. It takes you through the excitement of people working together towards a mutual goal and doing it on their terms to provide a service that and make it a success and to see it done right. You know, the whole process. People that know what they're doing, that are smart, that have the provisions, they know how to run things, and they do it. And this is all, and it's like a last ditch thing before they actually pass a law that would prevent them from ever doing something like that again. You know, and that's, you know, there's a sense of urgency when they're building this whole thing, and there's a whole bit about a bridge, and they say, no, the bridge will never hold up, it's too small, and, you know, and Rearden's just like, my steel kicks ass, you shut up, and, you know, and that whole thing, you know, that whole idea of like, you know, you don't believe me? Well, screw you, I'm gonna prove it to you right now. So anyway, the end of part one, though, is a good cliffhanger. The end of part one leaves us with a search, following a lead to find an old associate of, I think it was Hank's, where a car company used to be. They discovered a broken car engine that all they knew, looking at it, is that it had worked, and it was basically cold fusion. It was definitely a superior engine type that also didn't run on gasoline and would have run very inexpensively. This for Dagny left her obsessed with finding the answers. Amid those, and to find the answers and who made this engine. This book is not science fiction, but has fictions of some technologies in it as a plot point that the government does not want anyone to have but themselves. You know, like they talk about, you know, part of the story is they took the example of Rearden steel and they say, oh, Rearden steel is not safe, it's crap, it's this, that, and the other thing. And then I forget if it's before or after the railroad is made, even though they're not fully acknowledging the value of Rearden steel, what they do is that they say, like, well, listen, we're going to sign a deal, and we're going to buy all this Rearden metal off of you so we can build some stuff for the War Department, basically. So, oh, Rearden steel is perfectly good for the American military, and for whatever other personal interests of the government, but it's not good for the general public. You know, we've heard this tune before. It's you know, it's called Nikola Tesla. It's called let's steal all of his designs and fuck over the American people just because they can. So, even though these technologies could save mankind, despite the ultimate selfish motivation of the heroes, the character theme of this story is the virtue of selfishness at the limit of taking from others, which is basically part of common law. I mean, let's be dead honest. Some people are just real selfish people, right? You know, they're just like, they feel no sense of obligation to give to anybody or whatever. And you know what? That's fine. That's fine. I mean, that's their personal choice, and they have a right. They have a right to that. You know, they have their reason. Maybe they just don't see the value in helping you specifically, and maybe that's their problem. But at the same time, if they're also not bothering you, if they're not like actively making a point of disturbing your life, as long as you're not disturbing his, then that is also what's fine. This isn't about being a sinner or a saint. It's about what's right and wrong for people. Because, you know, not every person is, you know, like, you read a story and, you know, sometimes there's a lot of dents in the armor of that knight in shining armor. But, you know, you Hollywood everything and you gotta make it pretty. So on and so forth. You know, these are flawed characters, and there's no doubt that everything they do is based on completely selfish motivation. But at the same time, they don't harm anybody. They don't really have a hate for anybody. But all these people that are just begging them, you know, just like, give me a handout, they just don't have any respect for them. And guess what? I don't have respect for those people either, you know? So anyway, the biggest thing for people reading this book are to understand two things. This book is about the relationship between the individuals and the state, and it clearly defines that some people of wealth are not out to ruin anyone, and others are just more interested in using deceit to convince the world to steal from itself for themselves. That's pretty much it. So listen, you know, stay tuned. In a few days, when I can clear my head, I will give you a review on part 2, and then a few days after that, part 3, and life will be great. Okay, man, take care.